But in the Eastern Sahara, one of the most hostile places on Earth, archaeologists found something that doesn't fit on that ladder. Something built by people who, by the standard account, shouldn't have been capable of building it. But how is this possible?
The Sahara looks empty, endless, and completely lifeless. But beneath those scorching sands are clues to a past that feels almost impossible. Scientists have uncovered evidence of giant predators, strange sea creatures, and a world that once looked nothing like the desert we see today. One discovery is especially hard to explain: a creature from an ancient ocean that grew to a shocking size, while another reveals that humans once lived beside waters where there is now only sand. And that is just the beginning. What else is buried beneath the Sahara? Aegirocassis, the ancient sea giant. Imagine finding a creature more than 2 meters long in a piece of gray rock, only to discover that it lived hundreds of millions of years before the first dinosaur ever appeared. That is what makes Aegirocassis so strange. Its fossils were found in Moroccan shale, a place that is now part of the Sahara but was once covered by an ancient ocean. Aegirocassis lived during the Ordovician period, roughly 480 million years ago, when most marine animals were only a few centimeters long. At more than 2 meters, this animal would have been enormous for its time. At first, its size and unusual body made scientists think they were looking at a giant ocean predator. Its appearance suggested something built to hunt other animals in the ancient sea. But the closer researchers examined the fossil, the more surprising the story became. Instead of finding the weapons of a powerful hunter, they found huge structures around its head covered with countless tiny feathery bristles. These structures revealed that Aegirocassis had a completely different way of feeding. The strange appendages worked kinda like the baleen plates we see on modern whales. Instead of just going after big prey, Aegirocassis drifted through the water and did this filtering of tiny organisms, kind of on purpose. As seawater slid through those fine bristles, little crustaceans and plankton got caught there, and that's how the animal basically got fed. So, it was not really some terrifying predator, more like a calm filter feeder, hanging out in an ancient ocean that, yes, covered the region where the Sahara is now. Once it was discovered, scientists kind of had to rethink how these super early giant arthropods lived and evolved. Aegirocassis suggested that huge filter-feeding animals could show up and evolve hundreds of millions of years before whales ever appeared. There might be another reason for its unusual body size too. During the Ordovician period, marine plankton became way more abundant, and that made a steady, rich food supply for organisms able to sift enormous volumes of seawater. With that buffet available, Aegirocassis could take advantage of the flow and grow to a truly remarkable scale. Today, the Sahara is famous for endless sand and blistering heat, but inside its rocks, there's evidence that at some point, this same land was sitting under an ocean. And in that period, a 2-meter-long animal moved slowly through the water, sweeping up tiny life without any fuss. And if the Sahara once hid a giant sea creature, the next discovery proves that its ancient waters were also home to something far closer to us. Green Sahara, the 5,000-year-old human burials. The Sahara looks like one of the driest places on Earth today, but thousands of years ago, it was almost impossible to recognize. One of the most remarkable discoveries beneath its sands involves ancient human burials dating back around 5,000 years. These remains provide evidence of the Green Sahara, a period during the Holocene when large parts of the desert were covered by grasslands, trees, rivers, and freshwater lakes. Instead of endless dunes, people could live beside water and depend on the rich wildlife around them. The ancient burials show that human communities occupied this landscape when it supported far more life than it does today. But the human remains were only part of the discovery. Near the burial sites, researchers found evidence of a vanished aquatic world. Massive jaws from giant freshwater catfish, some nearly 2 meters long, were uncovered along with bones from Nile perch. Remains of hippos and crocodiles were also found, as well as shells belonging to soft-shelled turtles. These discoveries reveal that the people living here were surrounded by large bodies of water filled with fish and other animals. The evidence also points to how much these communities were tangled up with their surroundings. People lived along the shores of fish-rich lakes and rivers and used animal bones to make harpoons so they could take down big game. This was not some barren situation where survival meant pushing across wide, empty sand. No, it looks more like a thriving setting, with plenty of water and wildlife, enough so settlements could actually stick around. The Green Sahara existed because shifts in Earth's climate brought heavier seasonal rains into northern Africa, and then vegetation and lakes spread into places that are desert today. But later, the climate turned again. The rainfall fell off, and the lakes plus plant life faded out. The folks who had been living by the water eventually moved away, leaving their burial spots behind. After that, the desert sort of claimed everything, and it hid the evidence under layers of sand and dry earth. That's why these finds feel so strong. They suggest the Sahara was not always a place of nothingness. Under the dunes, there are hints of people who lived beside lakes, hunted animals, caught massive fish, and organized everyday life around water. Those 5,000-year-old burials are kind of a reminder that the Sahara we know now is just the newest chapter in a landscape that has, over time, changed a lot. Nigerasaurus, the dinosaur with 500 teeth. Some dinosaurs were built to tear flesh, crush bones, or fight rivals. Nigerasaurus was built for something much simpler, cutting plants. Discovered in Niger, this unusual dinosaur quickly earned the nickname the mowing dinosaur because of the strange shape of its mouth. It reached around 9 meters in length and may have weighed roughly 4 tons, but its most remarkable feature was its jaw. The front of its mouth formed a broad, straight edge, giving the head an appearance unlike that of most other dinosaurs. Along this edge were more than 500 small teeth packed tightly together, and Nigerasaurus did not have to wait for those teeth to wear out before replacing them. Behind the working teeth were rows of replacement teeth, with as many as 9 replacements waiting behind each one. New teeth could move forward as old ones became worn, allowing the dinosaur to keep feeding without stopping. This constant replacement was especially useful for an animal that spent much of its life cropping plants close to the ground. For years, scientists had this kind of different idea about how Nigerasaurus fed. Its very long neck made it tempting to think the dinosaur would just reach up high and strip leaves off trees. You know, straightforward. But when researchers did more detailed work on its skull, it told a more complicated tale. The scans show that the head was built for eating close to the ground, not up in the branches. And even the inner ear structure, kinda quietly, pointed to the animal keeping its head tilted downward most of the time, nose angled toward the soil at about 67 degrees. So rather than browsing from tall trees, Nigerasaurus probably moved across the fertile plains next to ancient rivers, slicing through low stuff with that broad mouth. Its meals may have been made up of tender greenery, think ferns and horsetails type plants. Those unusual teeth were just about perfect for the job, sort of like a living cutting instrument, because as it swept its jaws across plants, the teeth did the work. What makes Nigerasaurus even more remarkable is where it lived. The region that is now the Sahara was once packed with rivers, wetlands, and thick plant life. While predators like Spinosaurus stayed near the waterways, Nigerasaurus occupied a separate slice of the ecosystem, quietly cropping vegetation right from the ground. In the end, its odd skull and the hundreds of teeth that kept being replaced all the time give us another window into a Sahara that looked nothing like the desert we picture today. Machimosaurus Rex, the crocodile that survived extinction. Imagine finding the skull of a giant crocodile in the sands of Tunisia and realizing that it did not spend its life in a river. It lived in the open sea. That is what made Machimosaurus Rex such an important discovery. The fossil was found in rocks that preserve evidence of ancient marine environments, revealing a crocodile that was built for life in salt water. Its skull was more than 1.5 meters long, while its entire body may have reached 7 to 8 meters and weighed several tons. Unlike modern crocodiles that are mostly associated with rivers and swamps, Machimosaurus Rex had short limbs that worked more like paddles and a powerful tail that helped push its heavy body through the water. But its teeth were perhaps the strangest part. They were not long, thin, and sharply pointed like those of a typical meat-eating predator. Instead, they were short, rounded, extremely strong, and covered with ridges. This gave them the strength needed to crush hard objects. Researchers believe Machimosaurus Rex could have used those powerful jaws to break through the shells and bones of animals such as ancient turtles and mollusks. The discovery became even more important because of when this crocodile lived. For years, scientists believed that marine crocodiles were wiped out during the major extinction event at the very end of the Jurassic period, but Machimosaurus Rex challenged that belief. Its fossils suggested that at least one branch of these enormous marine reptiles survived the crisis and continued living in warm coastal waters. This meant the extinction may not have been as complete as scientists once thought, revealing an unexpected chapter in the evolution and survival of ancient marine predators. Instead of vanishing right away, they somehow persisted for millions of years in shallow bays and lagoons. That also implies that the ancient seas spread across parts of what is now North Africa were far more intricate than the modern desert setup suggests. Big marine reptiles shared those waters with turtles, fish, and other creatures, which in turn made a feeding network that would later disappear when the environment shifted. Machimosaurus Rex wasn't merely another giant crocodile skeleton, or at least it feels like more than that. It's a sign that a group assumed to have gone extinct had lived far longer than anyone expected. Now, the Sahara sits thousands of kilometers away from the sea, yet its rocks still can tell a different story, one where enormous crocodiles moved through warm salt water and used their crushing jaws to hunt under the waves. Onchopristis, the giant fish Spinosaurus, hunted. Spinosaurus was one of the largest predators ever to live, and an animal that size needed an enormous amount of food. But what could provide enough calories for a predator weighing well over a ton? One answer was hiding in the ancient river systems of North Africa. Its name was Onchopristis, a colossal fish that could reach around 8 meters in length. At first glance, it looked similar to a modern sawfish, but this ancient animal carried a remarkable weapon at the front of its head. Its long, flat snout was covered with rows of sharp, bony spikes and made up a huge portion of its body. For a long time, scientists thought Onchopristis may have been a slow bottom dweller that simply searched through soft sediment for food. But later studies revealed that its snout was much more useful than that. Specialized sensory structures could detect movements in the dark, muddy water. By swinging its spiked snout through the water, Onchopristis could injure or stun smaller fish, turning them into easy prey. It lived in freshwater rivers as well as brackish coastal lagoons, making it an important part of the ancient aquatic ecosystem. But honestly, the most fascinating evidence came from the animals that hunted Onchopristis. Paleontologists found remains that show strong bite marks on its body parts, and also bits of its distinctive spikes stuck inside the jaws of Spinosaurus. Pretty wild, if you think about it. Those findings sort of clarified a direct link between the gigantic fish and the giant dinosaur. Spinosaurus had a narrow crocodile-like snout packed with conical teeth, which were great for seizing slippery prey. And the paddle-shaped tail, too, implies it was pretty clearly built for moving through water. With enormous amounts of Onchopristis swimming through ancient rivers, the dinosaur could rely on a constant stream of large prey. This also helps explain how such a massive hunter managed to live in a place that feels almost impossible today. The Sahara wasn't always that bare, empty desert, either. Roughly 95 million years ago, rivers and coastal waterways supported huge fish, crocodiles, and fish-eating dinosaurs. Onchopristis was one of the key players in that entire setup. Not just some background organism, it was a formidable predator in its own right, while also acting as an important food source for something even greater. And its fossils really show how rich the ancient waters across North Africa were. You can practically feel it. And if giant fish once fed one of the most fearsome dinosaurs, the next fossil reveals an even stranger twist. The creature that would eventually rule the ocean still carried legs from its life on land. Basilosaurus, the whale that had legs. Today, whales are completely adapted to life in the ocean, but their ancestors were land mammals. Wadi al-Hitan, or the Valley of the Whales, lies roughly 150 kilometers southwest of Cairo in Egypt. Scattered across its dry landscape are the fossilized remains of ancient whales that lived around 40 million years ago, when warm waters of the Tethys Ocean covered the region. Among the largest and most impressive was Basilosaurus. This enormous animal could reach almost 20 meters in length and had a long, snake-like body that early researchers initially thought belonged to a giant marine reptile. But later research revealed the truth. Basilosaurus was an early whale and part of the long evolutionary history that eventually produced modern whales. It had already become a powerful and dangerous ocean predator, yet its skeleton carried a clue about its distant land-based ancestors. Hidden near the rear of its body were tiny but fully formed hind legs. Those limbs had recognizable joints, knees, and toes, but they were far too small to actually hold up such a huge creature on land. They were no longer useful for walking and had become leftover remnants from an earlier stage of whale evolution. Instead, Basilosaurus had a long, flexible body and powerful tail that allowed it to move efficiently through the ancient sea. Its jaws were lined with sharp teeth, showing that this was not a gentle filter feeder, but an active predator capable of hunting other marine animals. Fossils from Wadi al-Hitan also revealed another ancient whale, Dorodon, which was much smaller, reaching roughly 5 meters in length. Evidence suggests that adult Basilosaurus may have preyed on young Dorodons in shallow coastal waters. Together, these fossils paint a detailed picture of a vanished marine ecosystem and an important stage in whale evolution. These animals were no longer ordinary land mammals, but they had not completely erased every trace of their distant past. Those tiny legs provide a powerful reminder that their ancestors once walked on solid ground before generations of adaptation gradually reshaped their bodies for life in water. Eventually, the warm Tethys Sea retreated, and the landscape changed dramatically. The ancient waterways disappeared, sediments buried the bones, and the region slowly became part of the Sahara. Yet the fossils remained remarkably preserved beneath the dry landscape. Today, Wadi al-Hitan offers one of the clearest and most revealing windows into the extraordinary journey from four-legged mammals to aquatic whales, showing how evolution can transform a land animal into one of the ocean's most specialized giants. Carcharodontosaurus, the dinosaur with shark teeth. For a long time, the Sahara was thought of as a place where only small traces of ancient life could survive. Then, paleontologists uncovered the skull of a predator that completely changed that picture. In the Moroccan desert, researchers found a huge fossilized skull more than 1.5 meters long, filled with long, blade-like teeth. Those teeth looked so much like the teeth of a great white shark that the dinosaur received the name Carcharodontosaurus, meaning shark-toothed lizard. The first fragments of its jaws had been found much earlier, but discoveries in the 1990s helped scientists understand just how unusual this predator was. Carcharodontosaurus reached around 13 meters in length and may have weighed more than 6 tons, putting it among the largest land predators ever known. Popular comparisons often made it sound like an African version of Tyrannosaurus, but its skull tells a very different story. Tyrannosaurus had a thick, powerful jaw designed to crush bone. Carcharodontosaurus had a narrower, lighter skull and long, serrated teeth designed more like cutting blades. Instead of relying mainly on crushing power, it could deliver deep wounds to large prey and leave them too badly injured to escape. Having a land predator this huge really throws up another question. Carcharodontosaurus lived in the same general region as Spinosaurus, also an enormous hunter. So how could two big body giants stick around together without constantly butting heads over the same meals? The bones kind of answer this. If you look closely, Spinosaurus seemed strongly tuned to watery places, and it looks like it hunted fish a lot, way more than anything else. Carcharodontosaurus, on the other hand, was set up much better for chasing things on land. It probably wandered across open plains, and the edges of forests to look for big plant eaters, including younger sauropods. With that kind of split, the two predators could occupy different niches in pretty much the same ecosystem, without needing to steal every bite from each other. The river areas were basically owned by Spinosaurus, while Carcharodontosaurus stayed more on the ground. Roughly 95 million years ago, this part of Africa wasn't at all like the desert we picture now. There were rivers, wetlands, woodlands, and thick vegetation, with an amazing mix of animals moving through it all. Finding Carcharodontosaurus suggests that the ancient Sahara could handle more than just one enormous predator. It could support several mega hunters all at once. Its blade-like teeth and huge skull are still there, as proof that there was a world where some of the strongest land predators in Earth history lived side by side, not apart. Paralititan, the 60-ton desert giant. A bone nearly 2 meters long sounds impressive on its own, but imagine discovering that it belonged to only one part of a dinosaur that may have weighed around 60 tons. That was the astonishing clue found in Egypt when paleontologists uncovered Paralititan, a giant sauropod whose name can be translated as tidal giant. The animal may have reached almost 30 meters in length, making it one of the largest creatures ever to walk across ancient Africa. Yet its discovery created an obvious problem. The landscape around the fossil today is dry, hot, and covered by desert. How could a plant-eating animal this enormous have survived here? A body weighing tens of tons would have needed enormous amounts of vegetation every day. At first, the answer was difficult to imagine. Then, researchers began examining the rocks surrounding the skeleton. Instead of finding evidence of a barren landscape, they found fossilized roots, leaves, and branches belonging to ancient mangrove trees. The remains showed that this region was once a low-lying coastal environment filled with vegetation, waterways, and wet ground. About 95 million years ago, this region was likely in a warm coastal setting during the Cretaceous period or something close to it. You could imagine mangrove forests reaching along the shorelines, while salty channels and freshwater lagoons cut through the land in broken, winding paths. Paralititan probably could move through those coastal stretches pretty smoothly, using the thick vegetation near the water as its meals, like a slow but steady browser of the wetlands. And because it was so enormous, most predators might have found it hard to take on. Still, the young ones would have been much more exposed, in a way that is kinda obvious when you think about it. The discovery has also helped scientists grasp how drastically the Sahara once was. What looks like an endless wasteland today was, in fact, a humid coastal place, able to host some of the biggest animals ever. Paralititan was basically a living giant, moving through forests and marshy ground, and all of that is gone now, vanished in the background. Its fossils give us a snapshot of an ancient ecosystem where huge plant eaters, big hunters, fish, crocodiles, and a dense tangle of plant life all shared the same space. The most surprising detail is that the proof was not tucked away in some faraway tropical jungle. No, not really. Instead, it got buried under rocks in a location that now seems almost completely lifeless. In short, Paralititan shows that the Sahara went through an enormous transformation, shifting from a lush coastal paradise into one of the world's largest deserts. Sarcosuchus, the 11-meter super crocodile. Long before the Sahara became a vast desert, enormous rivers crossed North Africa, and one of the most frightening animals waiting beside those waterways was Sarcosuchus. Paleontologists uncovered an almost complete skeleton in the sandstone of the Tenere Desert, revealing a crocodile unlike anything alive today. Its skull alone could reach nearly 2 meters in length, roughly the height of a tall adult human. The entire animal could grow beyond 11 meters and may have weighed as much as 8 tons. Because of its incredible size, popular stories often portrayed Sarcosuchus as a formidable predator capable of attacking the biggest predators on land. But the real animal was already impressive without those myths. Its long, narrow snout ended in a rounded swelling, and its eyes were positioned high on the skull. This allowed it to remain mostly hidden beneath muddy water, with only its eyes and nostrils visible above the surface. When an animal came close to drink, Sarcosuchus could launch a sudden attack, and use its powerful jaws to seize the prey before dragging it into deeper water. Its jaws, however, weren't quite built for that famous spinning death roll you hear about in some modern crocodiles. Instead, evidence points toward Sarcosuchus, depending mostly on fish and smaller kinds of herbivorous dinosaurs that would come down to the river's edge. Its teeth and the whole jaw setup look made for grabbing and keeping hold of prey, rather than smashing up massive animals in one go. About 112 million years ago, this giant crocodile lived in a landscape packed with broad rivers and enormous fish. Those channels also held other hunters too, including early relatives of the giant dinosaurs that later became the ones everyone knows. Sarcosuchus seems to have sat in a dominant spot along the riverbanks, staying still, almost patient, until the exact instant arrived for a sudden strike. With its huge mass, it would have been a terrifying risk for anything that wandered close enough to reach those jaws. The find is extra striking because the surrounding Sahara today looks nothing like the place Sarcosuchus once called home. You don't see broad rivers or muddy banks in the modern Tenere Desert, and still, the sandstone keeps traces of a different time, when water carved the land and giant reptiles ruled the shorelines. Sarcosuchus wasn't some made-up creature from modern tales. It was a genuine 8-ton predator, living in ancient Africa, and growing to a size far past any crocodile still living today. And if Sarcosuchus ruled the riverbanks from the shadows, the next discovery reveals the predator that may have dominated the water itself. Spinosaurus, the dinosaur that ruled rivers. More than a century ago, strange dinosaur bones were brought from Egypt to Munich, beginning the story of one of the most unusual predators ever discovered. The dinosaur was Spinosaurus, but for decades, scientists struggled to understand exactly what kind of animal they were looking at. The original specimens were destroyed, leaving behind drawings and unanswered questions. Later discoveries in the Kem sandstones along the border region of Morocco and Algeria finally revealed more about this strange giant. Researchers found massive jaws with a narrow, elongated snout that looked surprisingly similar to a crocodile's head. Its smooth, cone-shaped teeth were ideal for gripping slippery prey. But the most important clue came from its tail. A remarkably complete fossil showed that the tail was broad and flattened, shaped almost like a giant paddle. This discovery forced scientists to rethink how Spinosaurus moved and hunted. Instead of being a typical land predator, it appeared to have been strongly adapted to life around water. Its dense bones may have helped it remain stable while swimming, while its powerful tail could push it through the currents of ancient rivers. About 95 million years ago, big water channels filled that area, like constantly moving roads for fish through what is now the Sahara. Spinosaurus could use that long snout and its conical teeth to seize fish in rather shallow water, and its strong tail helped it push through the whole river maze. How often it actually went under, or how far it might have swum, well, that part is still argued. But the signs suggest that water mattered for it in a pretty unusual way. Around 9 meters in the version described here, with a paddle-shaped tail and narrow jaws, it looked nothing like most of the other dinosaurs we know. The setting also had plenty of other giant creatures in it. Big crocodiles such as Sarcosuchus hung around the river edges, while oversized fish like Onchopristis cruised through the water. Out on land, Carcharodontosaurus hunted big plant eaters. Spinosaurus took a more aquatic-oriented role, leaning hard on prey from the water. When it was discovered, it shifted how scientists think about dinosaur habits and routines, and the Sahara wasn't always that dry expanse of sand. Long ago, rivers cut across the region, and they backed one of the oddest predators that ever walked our planet. Spinosaurus wasn't merely some massive animal standing beside a river. It was a hunter, formed by water itself. The Sahara may look like a lifeless desert, but beneath the sand lies evidence of oceans, rivers, giant animals, and people who lived in a very different world. And who knows what other secrets are still waiting to be uncovered. If you enjoyed this journey, hit like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more incredible discoveries. Then click the next video on your screen to uncover another mystery waiting to be explored. Paralititan.